Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. For today's video, I wanted to talk to you about how the narcissist becomes in a state of delusion. So let's jump in. So this is going to be groundbreaking for me at least, and I have never heard it before. But how does a narcissist get into a delusional state? How does the process all become anything dealing with life? There's either going to be an upturn or a downturn, or you're going to plateau. So in the case of the narcissist, when did they or how did they get into this situation? And then how did they get into a state of delusion? I'm probably going to, at this point, do like a 4 or 5 part series explaining the whole process, according to my personal opinion, with a spiritual background, and I have another couple of degrees, but it doesn't matter. I mean, some of it has helped. A lot of it has helped with open-minded thinking, because you can't just believe every textbook word for word or that sort of thing. You have to sort through things, because a lot of times they will put theory forth as, if you look into it deep enough, it's theory. But because it hasn't been challenged, it's almost as if it is fact. And when you go against that area of doctrine, then you're either blackballed or you're going to be considered ignorant. You're going to be positioned outside the community of what is supposed to be believed because your idea is wacko. But I don't care about that stuff, and I don't care what people think of me when it pertains to this subject. Now, in some cases, I don't want people bad-mouthing me or smearing me. I don't appreciate that. But nevertheless, my name, my clout, my stature will speak for itself. If not during the time of some sort of smearing, it will over time, and everybody will see through the lies. And that's how a lot of times it's best to deal with the narcissist. Just let them have their little parade. Because at the end of the parade, they get bit in the butt real bad. And it's never good for them. And because we don't hate them and we don't want revenge on them, just walk around in love, y'all. We just know that God is our authority. And our authority, if it doesn't come from the physical realm, it's going to come from the spiritual realm. And they can cast all their spells and do all of their smearing and trying to snuff you out, backstabbing you, setting you up, but at some point God's going to square off with them. Man, he's going to put them in the boxing ring, y'all. So that's what he's doing right now. But I wanted to go over, because I started thinking about, how does the narcissist become delusional? What happens in a state of delusion? They go through something. Maybe it is trauma. We all have gone through trauma, so it's hard to give them extra petting for whatever they went through. Now, in some cases, it is true, people have been through hardships, but you see that on both sides. And a lot of times what you'll find is the narcissist, whenever they go in to get diagnosed, and most of them don't even get diagnosed, but they go in for some sort of care because they're destroying the streets, don't have any self-control over themselves, so they'll go get some help because they destroyed a bunch of people. Then they couldn't get a supply source because they're just not credible anymore. So because they can't get a supply source and maybe they broke a lot of laws, they'll be out here just trying to smear everybody's name every day, and they go through this whiling out period, almost like that they're having a psychosis. And what happens during that period, not bathing, they're not sleeping, they're ruminating heavily, whatever you were ruminating on when the narcissist left you and ditched you and played you like a fool. Well, for them, if they get to this point where they have several narcissist injuries, which leads to a collapse, and things start to come to a head. And if you're the chosen source supply that left them, and you never turned around at some point because you had enough, you knew all of the narcissist talk and slander that was going to come at you, you knew all of it was going to be a lie. You knew there was no weight that was being carried behind it. And you knew they were going to destroy your title, your clout. They were going to smear you up and destroy your character and your self-worth out and about, day after day after day. But during these cases where they have these collapses, a lot of times they get into a psychosis because they just can't come out of it. It's like if they don't win, they have to continually come at you. It's like a military that's on the front lines. And it's obvious that the military, maybe it was stronger at one point, but then some reinforcements come through because maybe that strong military thought that they were going to be able to defeat the smaller army. But that smaller army, I'm getting a little emotional, but that smaller army was stronger than they thought. And they may have had them outnumbered 10-1. Excuse me, y'all. But it didn't matter because those people, that smaller army, they were not giving up, continuing to press on and push through to combat these individuals because they knew it was righteous. They were fighting a righteous war. And the stronger army that had all the equipment, they had all the armor, they had all of the missiles and all of the machine guns. They were all well trained and oiled up. They had their bayonets sharpened and they were just ready to go at it. They had grenades and missile launchers. There was money all over the place training these guys. They had pre-dug all of their trenches before the war even began. They had really dug in. And then you get this army coming over the hill, and maybe they're just trying to fight for their land back. But whatever it is, they're fighting for justice. And they have the divine on their side. And when you put divine with justice, which always goes together, it always goes together. Because the divine created what we call justice. And that smaller army goes over that hill. They didn't dig in. They look like the Dirty Dozen. They all got different weapons because they don't match. Half their armor's missing. And they just don't look so good. But they have the Almighty on their side, and that's all you need. And that's what's happened to me. God has given me so much grace, y'all, to deal with what I've been dealing with. And when you got people, and it may not be many, but you got that small army of people, man, and they're out there doing the Lord's work in the courts, in the district, in the federal bureau, and the police department, the Charlotte Police Department. And where there's some bad apples, absolutely. But you only needed a few good ones. And the Lord uncovers everything. And why the narcissist gets delusioned, because they go through something. Maybe it is some sort of trauma. Maybe it is some sort of betrayal or whatever. But whatever it is, there's always something loud coming by while I'm trying to talk and tell you something good. Doesn't matter if I'm in the house or if I'm in my car. This is the enemy. He's such a sucker, man. Such a sucker. I really hate the enemy's work. You know, as much as I want to say I hate the individuals, I don't hate the individuals, but boy, I hate his workers, meaning the activity of the demonic. They're such jerks, really. They make asses out of themselves, and they're so pompous forward, and they're always meddling in stuff, and they think they're never going to get caught. It's putrid. What happens? They go through something, and for whatever reason, it could be something with very little stress. So don't get it twisted, because they never pull the empath into a room as much as they sit the narcissist down. And the therapist will. The therapist will sit the narcissist down and say, what happened to you? And this is for entertainment purposes only, but they'll say, what happened to you? Why? Where have you been hurt? How does that make you feel? And I don't want to laugh about every therapist, but there are a lot that are ridiculous. They'll say, well, I was used, abused, I was the victim. And they'll say, okay, and they'll chart it down, and then next thing you know, they'll have every narcissist that comes in there get treatment, but they only get treatment for a short time, just to get over the hump till they get some new supply, some new fuel, and then they go back to doing what they're doing, generally speaking. Now, there may be a couple that do something different, but I have a hard time believing that when we have no real true situations that we've discovered yet of a real healing. But nevertheless, they chart all those things down, and then that's where they get their statistics from. So they take a manipulative liar, cheater, full-on manipulation, and they get them in a time where they're in need for supply for help, and you got somebody that will take any answer that you toss at them. Well, if you know the narcissist plays the victim all the time, then what makes you think that victimhood story is true? You think because you're a counselor, they're going to tell you the truth and not the true victim, the empath? Ridiculous. And that's where they get a lot of their statistics from. They get a pathological liar and cheater and sit them down when they're in a vulnerable state, and they're willing to accept any answer to give them therapy and ask them how they became the way they became. What do you think the answer is going to be? But do you think that they ever sit the empath down? Generally speaking, they don't, because if the empath comes to get help, they're not going to go to a full-on therapist because they're stronger than most of the time. Now, I'm not against therapy work. Therapy work is great, but my thoughts are it's where they're drawing their statistics from. And I think therapists can be great, but where they get their statistics, how they gather them for their data, is ridiculous. Because a lot of times what you'll find, the narcissist is going to eventually go to therapy, but the empath doesn't always go to therapy because they soldier on. You could say they're tougher or whatever you want, not to compare the two, but in my humble opinion, the empath is much tougher. So they're not going to go sitting down with a therapist. They're going to just press through it. Now, some do get therapy help, and that's fine. I think it's great. If I could get free therapy help or something, I would probably do it often, but I would use it to my benefit, to where sometimes what you find is the statistics that they deliver to these textbooks comes in a skewed way, in a skewed stance. And the true victim is really the empath. So I don't have a whole lot of reserve for this narcissist type. A lot of times they were golden children as well. Now, you can corrupt anything. I mean, you can have influence to corrupt anything. It really gets down to their innate spirit, to be honest with you, in my humble opinion. But they go through some trauma, and what happens, because they can't face the fear of getting over. It's kind of like when you go through something that's traumatic, you're going to have to go home. You're going to have to go somewhere. You're going to have to at some point process that information, because you have to reprocess it. Whatever happened during the traumatic time, to heal, you have to go back and run it through your processor again without the abuse in front of you. Although it will be traumatic to review it in your mind. If you've had to do that, you're not the only one. It's sad to say, but a lot of us had to, so nobody's alone here. But what I am getting at is you have to process that, and you get to decide whether you want to let it go or hold on to it. Whether you want to give it to God or you want to hold on to it, throw it on your back and carry it around like a dead carcass and let it hold you back, even if you were innocent. And it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. And at some point in time, it's put upon you to make the decision. And maybe it doesn't seem just, but I do believe all of the recompense, all of the negative things people have done to you, it comes back to them the same way. It may look like different energies, or it may come at them when nobody's around, but it doesn't matter. It's how you feel and what it does to your spirit. And sometimes nobody will know about it, but that individual will know. They will know. that they're getting something negative coming to them, and they're having a lot of bad, harsh days because of what they did. And sometimes maybe they don't get exactly what they should. But regardless, you have to decide, and a lot of times that's for you to decide when the time is right, because it's a process. I let it go at some point, but it was a process. I'm not going to try to force you down the process quicker than you need to go down it. But they don't want to deal with the fear. And a lot of times we call them cowards. And literally, that's really what it is. It may sound bad in this context, but the fact of the matter is everybody has to deal with the things that happened to them, whether they were good or they were harsh. And the narcissist would rather just block it with fear, or have the fear block it with pride, and then build walls up and boundaries and falsify whatever to protect that fear. But they never get rid of it. They throw it on their back and carry it around like a dead carcass. And over years of maybe trauma, instead of forgiving, they'd rather carry it around with fear as their leader. Then you have to block it with pride, and then you have to protect it with lies. And when you do that, then that's where delusions begin. And that's my point. That's what I come to. Delusions become an intricate part of the narcissist. When you refuse to face the fear of letting it go, the injury that comes is you have to build an illusion, and it ends up sacrificing yourself, because it only allows you to be driven down one brain path, and that's more of the objective side. Because for you to go down the emotional side of love, joy, peace, goodness, gentleness, all of that, they're connected. If you feel one, you feel them all. And if you can't forgive, you can't repent. You see how that works? You see how it curses you? I'm not saying I want them to be cursed, but this is kind of the pathway that it leads to. And then what it turns you into is a huge hypocrite over time, because then you feel you're almighty and you don't have to repent. You didn't forgive the person who did bad things to you or raised you up wrong, maybe as a golden child, pampered you, gave you entitlement, taught you entitlement. Then the abusive one that became a narcissist. They, out of fear, blocked it with pride and refused to forgive. When you can't forgive, you can't repent. It's a double-edged sword. If you can't forgive, you can't repent. And that's why I preach that on this channel. You have to let it go. You have to forgive. Forgive everybody and let it go. Lay it at the cross and give it to God. You don't have to tell that individual, but you want to make it known to God that you're not going to carry it, that you refuse to carry it any longer than you already have, because it's already been negative in your life. And for you to carry it any longer is going to cause more and more injury and lack in your life. So just let it go and be victorious. Rise up and take your seat at the King's table. Thank you for watching. Give me a like, subscription, and thumbs up. Love you all till next time. Soldier up. Peace. We out.